Hello everyone, I'm very excited to welcome you today to our 5th episode of today's Top Tech Leaders. The goal of this podcast is to share insights and knowledge of top CTOs and CPOs on their leadership and what they've learned throughout their journey. We'll cover management tips and tricks, organizational structures, tools, and best practices on how to successfully lead your product team. Our goal is to bring valuable insights to CTOs, CPOs of all seniorities. I'm Marc Clemens, I'm the founder and CEO of CodeControl and 9am. And for today's podcast, it's a pleasure to welcome Exequiel Zulliger. Exequiel has nearly 20 years of experience in engineering. He has worked for different industries such as telecoms, computer games, real estate, and also digital identity. Welcome, Exequiel. First of all, I'm pretty sure that it was not right the way that I pronounced your last name. The first name, I hope I got half right.
The first name was right, yeah. The last name,
Okay.
yeah, the last name is Zulliger, but it's fine.
Zulliger, okay, good, very good. Yeah, really nice having you with us today.
Sure.
Before we get started, and I think we want to talk a bit today about remote work in tech. What's your experience? What do you think is important? But before we dive deeper into that, tell us a bit about yourself, where you're from, where you're based, what do you like doing?
Cool. Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here talking with you and having the opportunity to share a little bit my experience. So yeah, I'm Exequiel in Spanish. I'm originally from Argentina, spent half my life in Spain. And when I was in Spain, I started a business with my brother and my father. It's like a family business, and typical family business, an internet service provider. So that's what we built. We were like not because you have these virtual operators. We were actually a physical operator, which means that we were like putting cables, fibers, and then I was on the ladder. I have a million stories about like ladies that were not happy to see us laying cable and coming up with a broom. This kind of situation happened to us. The police called on us and lots of things. It was fun. I was doing that for like 10 years. And then eventually decided that I want to do something else. And then we sold the company and then we moved, I moved to Germany, to Berlin. I was working in Berlin, in different areas. I started in the infrastructure side because of my background in telecom, doing DevOps and cloud and these kind of things. Then I moved to CTO and I've been from that moment on kind of like switching roles and freelancing because I was CTO for like a year in a company. And then I decided that I wanted to freelance and I became one of these, interim CTOs. So I started jumping from company to company, kind of like helping them build teams and then even hire CTOs for their like kind of like the permanent CTO, so to say. And I was doing that for, the best part of the last 7 years. Finally, in 2022, I decided to move here to Dubai. So I'm now in Dubai. It's very warm. We have
It's very warm, yeah, I guess.
Yes, we have 40 degrees right now, so it's nice.
Wow.
But the magic of the aircon. And so there you see the anyway. And then from here, I still work with like mostly German and European companies and kind of like still do the same while I have my side project that's been going on for 2.5 years, which is to create like basically a video game. And this is PatchNotes. And I've been doing that still with my original partner, with my brother. We recruited a remote team, mostly based in Latin America because first of all, yes, it's cheaper for us. Also from a tax perspective and everything is true. But also it's easier, of course, to work in our native language first. And secondly is we wanted to get something back to our countries in a way, right? And also give the talent there an opportunity, which otherwise, believe me, it's very hard. I don't want to get into that topic, but believe me, I know it very well. It's pretty hard.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and I know a few companies, actually. A good friend of mine was part of the starting team at Alpago, and they had the whole team in Latin America, and I just loved it. So many, so motivated people and fantastically smart people to work in tech. And here we work always in the European center and sometimes a bit in Eastern Europe, and we always forget about Latin America. So very happy that you do it, even though you're now, well, in Dubai, but work with people from Latin.
Yeah, up to 11 hours time difference.
Intense, yeah. So that's another layer. So because I think we want to talk about remote work, but I think remote work and time difference is another extra layer. Why is it such an important topic for you, and why do you love it?
Well,
remote work.
Yeah,
time difference, I'm not sure.
yeah, I was going to say what time difference. So that's a good question. So to be honest, I feel that when I'm in the office, I get like a lot of distraction because first of all, if you want to make a call, you have to go to another place. So yeah, for starters, already making a call and depending where you work can be a really challenging endeavor because maybe all the rooms are full, which is the normal situation in most startups. Then you are like, chasing like places, find a place to make a call. And if you are in anything that is management or like recruiting, like when I'm CTO, I spend maybe 20-30% of the time recruiting and at least. And that means a lot of calls, for good or for bad. And that means, of course, it's really, that's a big issue. If you think about it, I remember I was really suffering a lot finding a place to make a call all the times that I've been doing this. And then on the other side, you have like a lot of distractions. You have to follow everybody else's time in a way, like everybody kind of stops and goes to eat at the same time. Because of course, maybe you're in the middle of something. If I'm working at home, I have the freedom to choose my timing as I want. But if I am there, of course, everybody's going to eat. I'm not going to say, you go alone. And, it's not nice. And it's also, if you're there, to spend some time with the people. So for good or for bad, there's a lot of distractions. But on the other side, and to be honest, my main reason, and this is where the story that I want to share with you, and that's because I always wanted, I will be very here blunt. I'm a geek, So for me, isolation is not a bad thing, even though I talk a lot. I actually like, the peace of my temple, so to say. But yeah, so I always like to work remote and have like my own peace and my own rhythm. But the thing that really moved me to say, okay, no, this is what I need to do, is something that happened to me during the pandemic, which is it's a little thing that is now about this size. His name is Theo, and he's 3 years old. So that's what happened to me. So I'll explain to you. So my daughter, she was born in 2018. Okay, Bella. And she, she was born before the pandemic, like, and I was working. I was a
child.
Normal child. Well, normal within the parameters that I can say. You have to see her and then judge. But yeah, she's healthy. She's amazing. And I want to say I was working normally. I was going to the office and I would do sometimes home office, but that was like maybe once a week if so. And then that was like, then the pandemic came in 2020, 2 years. 2 years later, and then my son is born, and he was born in August 2020, so it was like in the intense. We were really scared, to be honest. Besides that, you can imagine, and going to hospital. I remember it was like my wife like was with a big belly, and then they ran us to the room and quickly taking swabs, and it was very complicated, and everybody with isolation and so on. It was a thing, but luckily everything went perfect. Thanks to the hospital in Berlin, in Copenhagen, they did an amazing job. Everything was really cool. But then, of course, I was already working from home because, the lockdown and whatnot. And that's when I figured out how many things I missed from my daughter's development. And this was really shocking for me because I had kind of like the, really fresh memories and I could compare. Because I didn't know, I was spending, of course, a lot of time with her, and as I said, I did some home office and so on. But being all the day, every day during, the development of my son, and being there, even if I'm working, she's running around. She's my wife. Then I can help her because she was also working. So we will be switching. Sometimes we'd get help when the lockdown rules allowed, and I don't want to be getting in trouble. But he was there and I was there next to him. And then in comparison, and retrospective, I felt that I missed a lot of beautiful moments from the first 2 years that never coming back from my daughter. And then I saw, you know what, I want to be working from home always. I always want to be remote because I want to, even if I'm here, even I am now alone in the room, door is closed, and they're running around there. I don't want to know what they're doing, but they're there. And I just have to open the door and I can see them. Something that wouldn't happen if I was in an office. So that's my actual motivation. And
nice,
here we
interesting. And I think it's I just remember that when you're talking about the motivators and how it happens, when I started with CodeControl is completely fully remote since 2016 already, and my first job at a startup in 2010 in Berliner Team Europe, I was sitting in a room with one other business person and 2 developers, and the 2 developers never talked. They were both working, had headphones on, but they were chatting. and then later, when I got to this remote thing, I said, well, we're doing a tech company. It really doesn't make that much of a difference because usually when I sat in rooms with developers, usually they didn't speak that much, at least during work, but whenever it was already more async, right? And was more on chat base. So that's what I'm wondering. Did the world change? I mean, did it change in the IT sphere when it comes to remote working in the way it's done? Or would you rather say it's more of a question of how companies are set up and that now we have a more active management of remote work? Or is it the same as before?
That's an amazing question. And yeah, 100% I agree. And I wanted to mention your point because exactly, you are in the same room and you're chatting and you're with the headphones. So then a lot of when people say a lot of cooperation happens in the office. Well, usually the cooperation happens in the office is exactly what you described. So okay, but let's leave it like that. So to answer your question, I believe that what has happened is that now the remote work became mainstream. Because until now, until the pandemic, I would say, of course, the technology was there. Zoom and the video conferencing and whatnot has been around for many years already. But it wasn't something mainstream. Like it was something I would say for a few weird people who wanted to be isolated and these kind of things, but not something that everybody was familiar with, or even everybody wanted to do or knew that it was even possible. Right? It was something very exotic, I would say. Then, at least from my personal experience, right, when I was talking to people and saying that I work remote, they were like, "What's that? Where do you work remote?" Well, remote. But then the pandemic, of course, forced that for good or for bad. Mostly for bad. I mean, it wasn't a good thing, but it forced it into people. And in a way, something good came out because I think that then, of course, a lot of people saw the advantages of working remote. They were exposed to it. They had the opportunity to try it. And it's not just me, it's the numbers, right? That most of the people now, they are either not wanting to go. I mean, nobody, and this is what the numbers say, wants to go back as the way that things were before. That doesn't mean that nobody wants to go to an office anymore. No, most of the people are somewhere in between, which is fine. There are, of course, you have the radicals like me, which are fully remote, which is great also. And of course, there will always be somebody who wants to go to the office. But in general, most of the people, after trying it, they don't want to go back to be every day in the office. And that's something that I understand, of course. So that's, I think, what has changed. I think that what has changed is that people had the opportunity to try it. And therefore, everybody, like managers, companies, they were forced to adjust to that and forced to provide infrastructure for this, to be possible. And then people were forced to do it, forced to try it. And I think that the vast majority of the people has, in some degree, embraced it.
Yeah, I fully agree, right? I think it's not for everyone. I think for a lot of companies, it's hybrid. I think even the ones that are forcing their people back to to the office, in the end, usually takes some kind of hybrid approach. And then I think it comes a bit, and this is for me the question, is it different in tech than in other things? And we see it for us with the sales team. Our sales team is also fully remote, but certainly the sales topic has always this thing of being in one room and fighting and ringing a gong and applauding each other. I exaggerate a bit, but well, in the US and the UK it's probably often like that, but it has a bit of this thing, right? This common goal topic. But I'm always wondering when looking into product development, I see it sometimes in workshops. We like to do, for example, product workshops. We like to do in person if possible. But when it comes to the day-to-day, we think that the majority happens on tools that anyways are digital, and the way that the alignment is done is digital. Would you agree? Should the remote tech stack, the remote way of leadership, be anyways the way to be able to do remote, no matter if you do hybrid, on-site or remote? Or is it different for remote companies or for remote tech teams?
Actually, I will express something that may be, I would say, controversial for developers. But in my personal experience, there's this thing that, we want to be in the same room to do the magical whiteboard development. So in theory, in this magical world, in the perfect world, the developers, these great minds, they get together in front of a whiteboard and they start writing things and they change the world like that. So that's in the theory.
For the cinemas.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's happened in movies, and that's what people think. Even many developers and many managers believe that that's how it happens. In my personal experience, every time that I've been in a board with more than 2 people, what happens is that you start playing the hangman and you get distracted and you start writing things. But I honestly never, and believe me, I tried many times, never got anything good. Even I have a whiteboard somewhere here. But I never got something good out of, let's all be in the whiteboard and then we will solve the architecture. Why is that? Because solving complex technical problems requires a lot of thinking and a lot of space, and it's usually much easier to just sit down 5 minutes and say, you do this, you do that, you do that. We know more or less what are the big areas, and then each one solves a problem, and they get together, and then we put it. But for that, you don't even need a whiteboard. To be honest, this whiteboard programming or whiteboard collaboration, etc., not even a digital one has ever worked for me. Maybe it works for somebody else.
In product design, yes, and in UX and in understanding what are some solutions.
Exactly.
Okay. Also, I think in the context of hackathon, it can be really nice to sit together and iterate next to each other.
Exactly.
But on a day-to-day,
the day-to-day is and as you mentioned, maybe we do a workshop once and then we all get together and we do the design together. That's fine. But then that doesn't happen every day, right? That can happen once every few months, and then we plan everything, and that's it. In practice, at the end, what you do and where most of the development happens, where it is, and when you do this Scrum weekly meeting where you clean up the backlog exactly, and then you start, this ticket, I was this, and this ticket, I was that, and that's where the actual development happens, and usually you don't want to have a whiteboard. You go and you do it from your computer because it's easier, you can see the tickets better and you can read better. So at the end, even if you were in the office, what would happen is that everybody would be looking at their own screen, because unless you have a very good projector, it's super frustrating. So in practice, and that's where the actual day-to-day development happens, when you sit down and you check your backlog, right? So that's it. That's my personal experience, yeah.
And when it comes to, I think this is always the other topic, right? Company culture, togetherness, and I think especially when it comes to onboarding people. Is there something that you think that is different, or something that you would advise people to do specifically when you onboard remote talent?
So what we were doing in PatchNotes, and that has worked well for us, is that I don't want to make here product placement, but we use Discord, okay? And for transparency, it's free.
Yeah, nice tool, open source. You can deploy it yourself on your own server, host it, and then all good.
So
you can also pay the subscription, so we're completely
open. Subscription, but yes. but the good feature that it's not the only ones that have this feature, but the great feature that they have is that you can join a chat channel, okay, and you chat, but you can also join an audio channel, and then everybody else will see that somebody is connected to this audio channel, right? And then they will see that the XA is like there and hanging out. I'm sometimes alone. So what we had the rule is that first of all meetings are public. So contrary to the maybe the intuition is like, oh, they're in a meeting with no. Every meeting is public, and then that means that if you go to Discord and you see that there are 2 or 3 people in like an audio room, you can jump in, and it's okay to jump in and say, hey, what's happening? So that generates a certain degree of like, it's kind of like the same situation if like we always want to compare it like when there are 3 people, talking next to a desk, and they're discussing some technical problem. Somebody else comes in and say, hey, what are you talking about? Okay, yeah, I have this issue too. So that's the idea. The idea is kind of like transmit these good things of being in the office in a remote environment where basically anyone can jump in, just like, in an informal conversation. That's the first rule that we have. The second rule is that no program meetings. So because if you program a meeting, then if you plan it, then you have a lot of overhead and it becomes very formal, and it becomes, then you limit, maybe then you get pissed if somebody else will join in because you have like a strict timeline. So it's a just informal. Every meeting is informal, and when you need to talk to somebody, you get, and also and the main reason was not to waste time, because when you need to talk to somebody in the office, you would just stand up. I would stand up from my desk and then I would king, bother him or her in the shoulder and say, hey, can I ask you this? And this, of course, you if you program a meeting, no, I will send you the calendar invite and we will meet like tomorrow. No, tomorrow I cannot. Maybe on Tuesday, maybe in 3 weeks from now. And for something that maybe could be fixed in 5 minutes. So the rule is like there are no planned meetings. You just bug that person, you jump into a channel, you solve the problem immediately, and then you go back to what you were doing. And then you save time. And therefore, working remote becomes an advantage, and it doesn't block you in any way. And also that way you are always, basically, we would be talking much more on a day-to-day basis. We're talking much more with each other than if we were even in the office. So
interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting because I think there are different philosophies. I know from remote, for example, they do only scheduled meetings and meeting-free days, and the meetings, they need to be meaningful, they need to be clear why, and there needs to be an agenda for it, which I'm a bit more on that side, but I think it depends also how you work. And the other part is having huddles or jumping quickly into a call, which is really nice to also stay in contact. For us, the sales team is doing this a lot. So I guess it also depends a bit on the way the teams are working, right? And do people feel easily disturbed or not? Is it simple problems? I think there's probably the part of what can you solve asynchronous, what can you solve through chat, and what do you need really to have a conversation with. I guess, I don't know, the way that you come across, you also like to have a relaxed conversation before, and I think this is always so important, right? If you're not in the office, then have a bit of a chat about the weather and about how everything is going, because you need to make sure that it's not always only business.
Precisely. And that's, of course, depends on the team and depends on the way of working. As I always say, the same medicine doesn't work on all the patients, even with the same problem, right? But in our case, that's what has worked very well. Really and also, for example, the stand-ups, we do the sit down, which is instead of doing it like standing up in a call, we do it written, asynchronous. So that way we avoid another planned meeting. We do have like there's only one allowed weekly planned meeting, which is the backlog grooming and checking, because it's good to have some cadence and to check everything, like everybody gets together and runs through everything. And we do it actually every week. Even though the sprint is technically 2 weeks, but every week we do like a quick run. You could call it like a extended stand-up, where we quickly go through all the tickets, and then we say what we were working on all the week, which issues, and then every second week, then there's like a much larger meeting with proper like a planning and whatnot. But every week there's kind of this I would say, longer stand-up that is in a call. That's the only one. And then at the same time, the second week, you will have like the longer one with the planning. But that's it. And for us, that works very well because it keeps the communication for all the team. So the problem, I think, in remote, but also happens in the office, is that you need to, for some things, everybody has to be aligned, right? And what happens is you start having kind of, even in a small team, you will have like little silos of information, right? So these guys or these people here, they are aware of this issue or they're working on this topic, and these other people maybe are facing a similar issue, but they are not aware, and maybe they're in the same room. So this is why we do have this rule to at least everybody in the same room talking remotely in a call. But other than that, everything is asynchronous, and it has worked very well for us. And yeah, with the guys in Mexico, we have 11 hours of time difference. So for me, that means that the calls usually will be at 6 p.m., 7 p.m. And it's like 9, 8 for them. But we make it work, and it's possible. It's possible.
And I imagine, I sometimes have the feeling that I go to bed and wake up the next morning and hope that something has changed. And obviously, we're all in the same time zone, plus minus 2 hours. So nothing has changed, obviously, because no one is working. For you, it must be the opposite. You go to bed and the next morning wake up like, wow, so many things have happened.
Yes, there's a lot of messages and PR. Why don't you check this PR? Blah, blah. Yes, that happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, cool. And what do you think about talent acquisition, finding people? We spoke about it in the beginning. Has it changed? Do you need special type of talent to be able to have a remote company, or does it work with anyone?
Of course, I mean, first of all, by simple statistics, of course, the fishing pond becomes much larger, right? Because you can essentially find people. I'm not going to say anywhere in the world because time differences, but in our case, as I said, having 11 hours time difference, so it's almost half of the hemisphere, at least is one hemisphere. So of course that makes it, I'm not going to say makes it easier, not necessarily, but gives you a much bigger like a search area, right? And potentially good candidates. On the other side, I believe that, of course, for somebody, the people that you recruit to work in a remote first company, they have to be aware what they are getting into themselves. Because of course, as I said, some people, they do want to be in the office. They do want to see people and hang out with people and so on, which is perfectly okay. And that may not work so well in a remote first company. Of course, you can do offsites, you can see each other from time to time. We have, for example, we have 2 guys which are in Colombia and they live close to each other and they hang out together a lot, but that's like a special situation because the others are across 10,000 kilometers. So that depends, right? But in general, my experience has been that you can access, I would say, the hidden diamonds that otherwise you would not be able to hire. Even it doesn't matter where in the world you are and which salary you offer, you wouldn't be able to find these people because you wouldn't even be able to get them from where they are to Germany or to the United States or to Canada or whatever. So that's my point of view. I think that this gives you, first of all, it makes it, of course, the search area much larger, but also allows you to find people that you couldn't find anywhere else. You wouldn't find any other way. And finally, as I was saying, for me, it's like kind of like a social thing because I'm helping my country and countries, and I'm giving opportunity to. I see myself in their position, and I would be really, really, really happy to be working for a company in Germany, in Dubai, whatever, but staying there in my city and working in peace. That would be super cool, and I want to give that opportunity for other people, and they deserve it. It's not, I mean, we are not an NGO. We're business, and we have to make money. But you can. I have funny story that I will share some other day. But I admit that companies have to make money, and that's legitimate. But you can. I believe in positive capitalism. I'm not going to say what was the altruist thing of FTX. I'm not going there, but I believe that you can actually make money and do things right. It's so easy, right? You can. You don't have to be I would say like an activist, right? It's like making 2 or 3 decisions. You can do things right and things good for the world, and still make money. And it's not a contradiction.
And in this context, even having better talent for your company, right? So,
and even in these cases, you exactly, you have even a benefit, not just like you get a capitalist benefit. So that's how I see it, and that's why it feels good and it's nice, and we have a lot of fun, and it's a very crazy team, I would say. A team I'm proud of.
Really nice. Happy to hear. Thank you so much. For the end, a last question. I didn't prepare you. It's just 1, 2, 3 tips on leading distributed teams, or if you have any books, resources, or I don't know, thought leaders that you're following that you would recommend. Do you have anything where you say, this is something I always love to share, or last book that I loved?
That's good. I've never actually seen a book on remote work. I'm sure there are, but I've never bothered to read. I always read like development books, and my last book is like deep learning book. But I can give you like quickly, one thing is that first trust your people, because that's something that we didn't talk, and it's super important. People, just because they are remote, and now like Elon Musk was saying, oh, if you go home, if you don't work you can not work, you can pretend that you're working in your home. That's what he said. And I don't think that remote workers pretend to work. I think they work and they're very productive. So trust them, trust your people, because you can also be lazy in the office. Believe me, I know of people who did that. So you can be lazy in an office just like you can be lazy remotely. That doesn't depend on the remoteness of the work. So first of all, trust people. Secondly, talk to people. So have some mechanism, whatever it is. As I said, in our case, always making meetings public, or maybe always scheduling them, but always make sure that there's a flow of information and there's at least one place when everybody is aware of what's happening. That's super important, which also applies to the office, I believe, but in a remote team is especially important. And finally, I will say the last thing is, you need some sort of like a group activity. You need some sort of group activity, which I also didn't mention, but we have like a psychologist in the team. And then every now and then we do remote offsites in which everybody, the psychologist, she guides us through like a series of like team building and group building activities. We have to draw things, we have to explain things to the other, and so on. That really connects us, and that's really nice. And of course helps build team. Something that, once again, also is applied to the office, but I think in a remote team is super important. With this thing, the most important, I think, is trust. The rest comes.
I couldn't agree more. Thank you so much. That was a great summary, and I think this is exactly the tips that I would give anyone when it comes to what have we learned out of remote work. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Exequiel. How can people reach out to you if they have any questions? Is there any preferred channel?
I mean LinkedIn, or I guess the easiest is LinkedIn.
Then we put LinkedIn into the show notes.
Perfecto.
Thank you so much. Have a lovely day. Thank you for everyone listening in today's Top Tech Leaders. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you can give us a little star rating, and if you like it, a 5-star rating, helps us a lot to get more visibility on the podcast. Thank you so much. Until next time, keep coding, keep leading.
Thank you. Have a nice day.